I had been driving for hours. The long stretch of highway blurred into a monotonous, empty expanse, the hum of my tires against the asphalt lulling me into a dull trance. It was past midnight, and I still had at least 3 more hours before I reached my destination. My eyes burned from exhaustion, the coffee I had downed hours ago doing little to keep me alert. I was relocating for a job, an opportunity one couldn't pass up. The offer came suddenly, and I had barely enough time to pack what I could into my car before hitting the road. My apartment lease was already up, and I had no choice but to drive through the night if I wanted to check into my new place on time. The thought of finally settling down in a city where no one knew me was exciting. But right now, all I wanted was to pull over and sleep. The highway was eerily empty. No streetlights, no buildings, just the occasional reflective road sign illuminated by my high beams. The further I drove, the more uneasy I became. It wasn't the fatigue, there was something about the silence of the road, the void beyond my headlights, that felt wrong. Then I saw him. A man, standing on the side of the road. He was dressed in a dark suit, hands by his sides, staring directly at my car. His face, pale in the glow of my headlights, was completely devoid of expression. As I sped past, I glanced at my rearview mirror and saw him turn his head, his gaze following me until he disappeared into the night. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. I told myself it was just some guy whose car had broken down. Maybe he was waiting for someone. But deep down, I knew better. The way he stood so still, so eerily composed, made my stomach twist. I shook my head and kept driving. 15 minutes passed. My thoughts drifted between exhaustion and paranoia. I needed another coffee. Then, a head on the shoulder, I saw him again. Same man, same dark suit, standing motionless. My hands clenched the steering wheel. No, that wasn't possible. I had driven miles since I saw him last. There was no way he could have made it here before me. I checked my rearview mirror as I passed. He was looking at me. This time, I didn't look away. I kept my eyes locked on the mirror, watching as he turned his entire body toward my car. His face remained blank, but I could feel something radiating from him, something unnatural. My breath quickened, and my fingers dug into the wheel. Then he took a step forward. My foot slammed the gas pedal. I wasn't going to stop. I wasn't going to look back. I needed to get out of here. My heart pounded as I sped down the highway, but no matter how fast I drove, the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. Every shadow on the roadside felt like him. Every flicker of movement in my peripheral vision sent my pulse into overdrive. I turned on the radio, desperate for a distraction. Static. No music, no voices, just a dull, empty hum. I flipped through the stations, nothing. My breath came in shallow gasps. The loneliness of the road felt suffocating, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. I glanced in the rearview mirror again. My stomach dropped. He was sitting in my back seat. I slammed on the brakes. My car screeched to a violent stop in the middle of the highway, my seatbelt yanking me back as I gasped for breath. My hand shook as I slowly turned my head toward the back seat. Empty. I was alone. I blinked, my vision blurring with exhaustion and fear. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. No, he was there. I saw him. He was sitting right there. I gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I couldn't stay here. I had to keep moving. I pulled back onto the road, forcing myself to focus, but my hands were trembling so badly it was hard to keep the car steady. The next gas station was only a few miles ahead. I would stop there, get some air, clear my head. I turned into the station's empty parking lot, pulling up beside the pumps. I killed the engine and leaned my head against the steering wheel, trying to calm my racing heart. Then, in the glow of the station's overhead lights, I saw him again, standing just beyond the pumps, watching me. His face was clearer now, his expression still vacant, but his eyes were hollow. A darkness swirled inside them, something unnatural, something inhuman. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. He lifted his hand and slowly pointed at me. Then he stepped forward, and the station lights flickered out. The gas station was swallowed by darkness. The humming of the fluorescent lights above had ceased, leaving only the suffocating silence of the night. My breath hitched as I fumbled for the key in the ignition, my fingers trembling. I turned it, but the engine sputtered weakly, refusing to start. No, not now. I glanced up. The man was still there, standing just beyond the pumps, his hand still raised in my direction. But something had changed. His face, there was something wrong with it now. His features were distorting, stretching in unnatural ways, as though his skin no longer fit properly over his bones. I slammed my hand on the steering wheel, willing the car to start. My pulse pounded in my ears. The darkness outside felt alive, pressing in around me. My headlights flickered weakly, illuminating the emptiness beyond. And then, a shadow moved behind my car. I turned so fast my neck ached. The rearview mirror reflected only pitch blackness, but I knew something was there. A sound, a whisper, not from outside, from the back seat. I didn't look. I couldn't. My hands trembled as I yanked at the door handle and threw myself out of the car. The bitter night air burned my throat as I stumbled backward, my eyes darting wildly. The man was gone. The space he had occupied was now empty, save for the faint shimmer of something shifting in the darkness. I turned toward the gas station store, praying it was still open. The doors were locked. Inside, the dim emergency lighting cast long, flickering shadows across the empty aisles. No clerk. No customers. No one. A noise. Behind me. I spun around, my breath freezing in my chest. My car sat motionless where I had left it, the driver's side door still open. The gas station lights flickered back to life, buzzing weakly. And then I saw him again. Not in the lot. Not on the road. In the driver's seat of my car. He was staring at me through the windshield, his expression unchanged. But now he was smiling. A slow, deliberate grin that stretched too wide across his face. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, long and skeletal, tapping lightly against the leather. I took a step back. My phone. I needed to call someone, anyone. My hand reached for my pocket, but before I could even unlock the screen, the radio in my car crackled to life. Static. Then, a voice. Familiar. My voice. You're running out of time. The world tilted. I felt the blood drain from my face. No, that wasn't possible. That wasn't. The voice crackled again. You shouldn't have stopped. My vision swam. My pulse roared in my ears. And then, the engine started. I watched, frozen in place, as the car idled for a moment, exhaust curling into the cold night air. The headlights flickered. And then, with a sudden lurch, the car shot forward, right toward me. I barely had time to react before the tires screeched against the pavement, the vehicle careening toward me with impossible speed. I dove to the side, my hands scraping against the concrete as I hit the ground. The car swerved at the last second, missing me by mere inches before coming to a dead stop just beyond the pumps. The driver's seat was empty. My mind reeled. I staggered to my feet, breathless, scanning the shadows. He was gone. No movement. No sound. Just the low hum of the gas station lights and the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. A text. Unknown number. You won't make it. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the device. I didn't reply. I didn't move. I just stood there, my body locked in place by the overwhelming certainty that this wasn't over. And then, a low creak. I turned, my stomach twisting into knots. The passenger side door of my car was open. Something was inside. Something was waiting. I didn't wait to find out what. I turned and ran. I didn't stop. Not even when I heard footsteps following me. Not even when my phone buzzed again with a final message. See you soon. Story 2. The interstate was nearly empty. Just me, my car, and the endless stretch of dark road ahead. The hum of the tires against the pavement blended with the low static of the radio, my mind drifting in and out of focus. It was past 1 a.m., and I still had 3 hours to go before I reached my brother's house. I hated driving at night. The loneliness of the road always made me uneasy, the way the darkness swallowed everything beyond the reach of my headlights. But I had no choice. I had taken a last-minute trip for work, and I needed to be back by morning. The GPS guided me onto a long, desolate stretch of highway, cutting through miles of nothingness. No gas stations, no rest stops, just an occasional road sign reminding me how far I still had to go. Then, up ahead, I saw something. A car, sitting on the shoulder. Its hazard lights blinked in the darkness, weak and unsteady, like a dying heartbeat. As I got closer, I could make out a figure standing next to it. A woman, waving one arm, her face barely visible in the dim glow of my headlights. I slowed down. Something about her seemed off. Her movements were stiff, almost unnatural. She wasn't panicking, wasn't rushing toward my car, just standing there, waving methodically, like she had been doing it for hours. I pulled up beside her, rolling my window down just enough to hear. "Do you need help?" I called out. She turned her head toward me, and for the first time, I got a good look at her face. Her eyes were wide, too wide, her pupils dilated. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then, finally, in a hoarse whisper, she said, "He's still in the car." I felt my stomach drop. "What?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took a slow step back, her gaze locked onto mine. I hesitated, then leaned forward to get a better look inside her vehicle. A dark shape sat in the driver's seat. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, the way the dim light played tricks on my eyes. But then, it moved. The figure's head turned, just slightly, and I swear I saw a pair of gleaming eyes reflecting the glow of my headlights. I put my car in park, my fingers tightening around the wheel. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't just drive away. "Who's in there?" I asked, my voice uneasy. The woman took another step back. "Please," she whispered. "Just drive." A chill crawled up my spine. Then, the figure inside the car, it smiled. Not a normal smile. Not a human smile. It was too wide, too sharp, the corners stretching unnaturally across its face. And then, the passenger door opened. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I threw my car into drive and slammed my foot on the gas. The woman didn't move. She just stood there, watching me as I sped away. In the rearview mirror, I saw her car's headlights flicker and die, swallowing her in complete darkness. My heart pounded as I sped down the highway, my mind racing. What the hell had I just seen? I forced myself to breathe, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. It had to be exhaustion, sleep deprivation, my mind playing tricks on me. But then, my headlights flickered, the radio crackled, and from the back seat, a voice, soft, cold, right behind me. "You should have helped her." My entire body locked up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The voice had come from behind me, inside my car. I knew I was alone. I had been alone. My doors had been locked the whole time. But I felt it. A presence. The air behind me had shifted, grown heavier, colder. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles turning white. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to look in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw something, a figure in the back seat. A dark shape with hollow, gleaming eyes. Then the lights flickered again, and it was gone. No. I was losing it. It was exhaustion. It was my mind playing tricks. It had to be. I clenched my teeth and stared at the road ahead, forcing myself to focus. Just drive. Just get out of here. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to call someone. Anyone. But the screen was frozen. The time had stopped. 1:17 a.m. A whisper. So close it felt like it was brushing against my ear. "You should have helped her." I let out a strangled gasp and slammed my fist against the radio. Static exploded through the speakers, high-pitched and grating. My car lurched, the engine coughing as the dashboard lights flickered. I pressed my foot to the gas, gripping the wheel tighter. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, but the farther I drove, the darker it seemed to get, like the night was swallowing the world whole. Then I saw the headlights. Up ahead, a car was stopped in the middle of the road. No, not just any car. Her car. The same sedan. The same flickering hazards. Parked directly in my path. I slammed the brakes, my tires screeching against the pavement. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. It wasn't possible. I had left her miles back. But there she was, standing next to the car, waving. Same slow, methodical motion. Her wide, vacant eyes locked onto mine. No. I threw the car in reverse, my tires skidding as I tried to turn around. The radio blared more static, my phone screen flashing with distorted, unreadable text. Then, a hand grabbed my shoulder. Cold. Clawed. Tight. I screamed and spun around. Nothing. Empty back seat. But the back door was open. I didn't stop to think. I didn't stop to breathe. I floored it. My car fishtailed as I tore down the highway, my vision blurring, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't look back. I didn't care where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. Then, the headlights in my rearview mirror. A car was behind me. Too close. Way too close. My fingers clenched the wheel as I tried to speed up, but the car behind me matched my every move. My chest tightened as I dared to glance back. It was the sedan. Her car. And in the driver's seat, the thing with the hollow eyes. It was grinning. I could see its teeth. Too many teeth. Then my phone buzzed. A single notification flashed across the frozen screen. Unknown number. It's too late. A horn blared. Blinding headlights swallowed my vision. Then, impact. I woke up on the side of the road. My car was motionless, the engine still running. My hands were still gripping the wheel. My heart thundered inside my chest as I sucked in a ragged breath, looking around wildly. The road was empty. No sedan. No woman. Just me, my car, and the long stretch of highway ahead. Had I fallen asleep at the wheel? Had I imagined it? I reached for my phone, but when I lifted it, my stomach dropped. The screen was still frozen. The time still read 1:17 a.m. And one final text message sat unread. Unknown number. You shouldn't have stopped. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. Then, from the back seat, a whisper. See you soon. Story 3. I never liked driving at night. Something about the darkness beyond the reach of my headlights always unsettled me. But tonight, I had no choice. I was on my way home from my grandmother's house, a last-minute trip after she had called me earlier, saying she had a feeling she needed to see me. She was always like that, intuition sharper than anyone I'd ever known. She had hugged me tight before I left, whispering something under her breath that I hadn't quite caught. Something about being careful on the way home. I wished I had listened. The road stretched out ahead of me, empty and silent. No streetlights. No other cars. Just the rhythmic hum of my tires on the pavement and the occasional flicker of my dashboard lights. Then, up ahead, I saw it. A figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my heart lurching into my throat. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, silhouetted in my high beams, completely still. I squinted. It was a man. He was facing me, his head slightly tilted, like he was studying me. I felt my pulse quicken. What was he doing out here, in the middle of nowhere? I hesitated, my fingers gripping the wheel. I could just go around him. Maybe he needed help. Then, he took a step forward. I tensed. Another step. His gait was unnatural, almost like he wasn't used to walking. His head remained tilted, his arms hanging loosely at his sides. Then I saw his face, and my stomach dropped. It was mine, not just similar. Identical. Every detail, down to the faint scar on my chin from when I was 8. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. I was staring at myself. Then, my doppelganger smiled. I threw the car into reverse, my tires screeching as I backed away. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest. The other me just stood there, watching. Then he started running, straight for my car. I screamed and floored it, spinning my wheel as I swerved around him. I didn't look back. I didn't care what he was or where he had come from. I just needed to get away. I drove too fast, my hands shaking, my breath ragged. My mind raced. That wasn't possible. It couldn't have been real. I had to be hallucinating. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him again, running alongside my car. I nearly lost control. I wasn't on a highway anymore. I had veered onto an empty back road, trees lining both sides. I had no idea where I was, but it didn't matter, because he was keeping up. His movements weren't normal. His arms didn't pump. His body barely shifted, but somehow he was running beside me at over 60 miles per hour. Then he turned his head toward me, and he grinned. I screamed. That was when my radio blared to life. Static. Deafening, crackling static. Then, a voice. Not mine. Not human. You shouldn't have left. The car jerked. The steering wheel locked up. My headlights flickered. And from the back seat, a whisper. Turn around. The whisper slithered down my spine like ice. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My fingers were locked around the wheel, my knuckles white. The road ahead twisted through dense forest, my headlights flickering like a dying candle. My foot pressed hard against the gas pedal, but the car barely responded, like someone was resisting me. Then, a hand touched my shoulder. I screamed and swerved, nearly losing control. The tires skidded against the pavement, gravel kicking up as the car veered dangerously toward the trees. I jerked the wheel back, heart hammering. Don't look. Don't look. Don't look. But I felt it. The breath against my ear. The cold weight behind me. Something was in the back seat. The static on the radio crackled again, and through the distortion, I heard my own voice. You shouldn't have left. No, that wasn't me. I reached for my phone with a shaking hand, fumbling to call someone, anyone. The screen was frozen. The time read 1:17 a.m. My stomach twisted. It had been 1:17 a.m. for the last 20 minutes. I swallowed hard, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The road stretched on endlessly, a loop of darkness and flickering light. No signs. No exits. Just an unbroken tunnel of trees and pavement. I stole a glance at the rearview mirror, and immediately wished I hadn't. He was there. My doppelganger. sitting in the back seat, grinning. His head tilted at an unnatural angle, his fingers drumming softly against his knee. His eyes met mine through the mirror, and then his lips moved. No sound, just the silent, unmistakable shape of the words. "Let me drive." I slammed on the brakes. The car fishtailed violently, tires screeching, momentum slamming me forward against the seatbelt. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I gripped the wheel, my entire body trembling. Silence. I forced myself to turn around. Empty. The back seat was empty. My heart thundered against my ribs as I struggled to catch my breath. What the hell was happening to me? I pressed my palm against my forehead, trying to steady myself. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked pale, drenched in sweat. Then, I noticed something. My reflection was still looking at me, even though my head was down. I felt my stomach plummet, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I raised my head. My reflection's lips curled into a slow, malicious smile. And then, he blinked. I didn't. The radio screeched. The lights died, and the mirror shattered. A voice, my voice, whispered through the speakers, low and taunting. "You're going the wrong way." The engine stalled. The car shut off. I was trapped. Alone. In the dark. Or at least, I thought I was alone. Until the backseat creaked. And I heard breathing. Right. Behind. Me. Switch places. The whisper wasn't mine this time. It wasn't human. And before I could move, hands grabbed my shoulders. The world turned upside down. Then, nothing. I woke up behind the wheel. Sunlight streamed through the windshield, blinding me. Birds chirped outside, the highway stretching out ahead like nothing had ever happened. I gasped, sucking in breath like I had just surfaced from drowning. My hands gripped the wheel, but they weren't shaking anymore. The clock read 8:32 a.m. Had I dreamed it? Had I fallen asleep at the wheel? I exhaled, rubbing my face. My phone buzzed. A text. From my own number. Unknown. Next time, don't fight it. My blood ran cold. Then, in the rearview mirror, a glimpse, a shadow, a grin, and two gleaming eyes watching me.